Welcome back. Today in this short tutorial, I want to show you guys how you would go about protecting different server endpoints in your Nuxt application. So if you've ever been in a situation where you're creating a full stack application with Nuxt and you're using the server folder, then you may have been in a situation where you wanted to protect certain endpoints. And to do that, instead of creating that logic inside of each route handler, there's actually a better way to do it, or what I think is a better way. I may be wrong with this approach, and it may not be scalable depending on the size of your application, but it's an approach to try and be aware of nonetheless. And I think if you really want to know how the server side of Nuxt works, it will be beneficial if you actually take some time to learn how H3 works, which is this repository. It was created by Andre's team, same team that builds and work on the different Nuxt features. And you will see where the documentation here, it shows you how to set up a basic application with H3. And then if you come down here to the utilities section, it will show you a lot of useful functions. Now, all of these functions are available on the server side of Nuxt. Like recently, I found out that this function existed. I used to do validation manually in a different file, and now I'm learning that I can actually validate the body being sent to the server inside the event handler with this utility function. So if you really want to step up your Nuxt server game, take some time and learn about these different utilities. It will actually save you a lot of time. Of course, this framework actually powers Nitro, which in turn powers Nuxt. So it, like I said, very beneficial if you take some time and learn how these two things work. So today we'll actually be going to, not get started, guide. Then we'll go to the directory structure. Then we're going to come down to server. And of course, we'll be using this documentation to build our little dummy application, because I'm not going to build out a full-fledged application. I'm just trying to build a minimal application to show you how you'd actually go about, setting this up, sending requests to your API endpoint, and then protecting the different routes. So without further ado, let's just jump into VS Code and start coding. So I have VS Code open right here, and I'm just going to open the terminal and create a new Nuxt application. So it goes npx nuxt latest init, and the project files get created, and we'll install the dependencies with npm. Once the dependencies are installed, we're going to go ahead and create initialize a repository. So I'm going to say yes right there. And just so we don't commit files that we do not want to GitHub, we're going to update this gitignore file. And to do that, I have this very helpful extension installed. It's called gitignore, right? And what this will do is just allow me to add different properties for different code bases to my gitignore file. So I'm going to say I want to add the stuff for node to gitignore. I'm going to append it. And if I look at the file now, we can see where a lot more files were added. Since I'm on Windows, I also add the template for Windows. I'm going to append that. And you can see here where the file got updated. So that's gitignore out of the way. I'm going to use the UI thing library that I created for styling. So I'm going to say npx UI thing latest init, and then I'm going to select Zinc for the theme that I want to start with. Tailwind file will be at this location. It's going to be the name of the Tailwind config. My components should be stored in this folder. The composables here, the utilities here. And yes, I want to override the stuff, and I want to use the default file name. Install the dependencies with npm. All the files and folders get created, and I'm just going to wait for this to finish. While we're waiting, if you want to try out the UI thing library, you can just visit this link and you'll see how you can get started and how the different components work. And if you want to learn more about how the different components work, you can just click the link to the source code, and it will actually take you to that file or folder on GitHub, so you can actually check out the different components that are being pulled down to your code base locally from UiThing. So now we can actually start adding components to our application. I'm going to go to my package.json file, and I'm going to add a new script for adding components easily. So I'm going to call it UI, and it's going to be npx --yes. And this --yes flag just tells npx to install the stuff without prompting me to confirm if I want to install it. Let's say UI thing, latest, add. Now if I should run this command, so run, or script, sorry. So run the script, it will reach out to UiThing and call the add command, which will allow you to search for different components that you want to add to your application. I'm going to start with the, let's focus the terminal. I'm going to add the container, the navbar. I need buttons, of course. And I think I'll need the table component. So I'm going to use a simple table right here. Let's see, do I need anything else? Probably the divider. And if I need anything else, I'll just add them along the way. It's asking me if I want to install these packages. I don't need to, because when I ran the init command, it actually installed these for me. If you can check the package.json file, you can see where we have Radix view, we have Tailwind variants, and of course we have the Nuxt icon module installed. So I'm going to say no, I don't need you to install that. Close that, and our Nuxt config should look something like this. So UiThing, the init command actually added these modules. So Tailwind, color mode, view use, and Nuxt icon. And you can see where we're exposing our Tailwind config here. And the color mode, we're doing the same thing. We're setting the class prefix. And we're setting the shim value to false within the TypeScript object. And this is just to enable takeover mode. So let's just complete this process. And we can do so by going to our extensions, and we'll type in built-in, then search for TypeScript, and then we can just disable it in this workspace. Reload VS Code, and you'll see where takeover mode should be enabled, but we're not seeing it down here. Why is that? That's because I have not switched over to my Nuxt 3 profile. So let's go to profile, Nuxt 3 profile, and I get all of my extensions that I use with Nuxt 3. And now let me just zoom back in. When I make these changes and save, the file should be formatted properly. Yep, there we go. And you can see down here where we have takeover mode enabled. Now you can see where it's saying that Nuxt DevTools is not installed. I actually opened an issue on GitHub because Nuxt DevTools, it does not have to be installed since version 3.8, but the module, that's the NuxtR module, or extension, sorry, the NuxtR extension is still prompting you to install it. So I'm just going to install it as a dev dependency, just so I don't get that to pop up every time I reload VS Code. So I'm going to install it as a dev dependency. And now that it's installed, whenever I reload, I won't get a little pop-up down here. Good. Now to finish setting up this, I think I'll need to add the app object to our config file. I'm gonna just set the title. It should be inside of the head object. So it's gonna be title, and it's gonna be protect server endpoints, because that's what this video is about. And the title template is going to be whatever the page that we're on is, followed by this. So let's just save that. Next, we want to come to the app.view, and I'm going to go ahead and let's see, I want to add the loading indicator component. I'm going to add Nuxt layout. I'm going to add Nuxt page and save. I also need to add the toast component from UI thing. So I'm going to run this script again. I'm going to search for toast. Hit enter. No, I don't want to install the dependencies. And this is the instruction here is telling me to remember to add this to my app.view file. I'm going to go ahead and add it here. Hit save, and that should be it for our app.view for now. I'm going to go ahead and right click this area and select create project structure. And that command is actually coming from the Nuxt extension. So this extension right here, install it if you're gonna do Nuxt development. Very good. So go back to what we're doing. Create the project structure. I want the layouts folder. I want the pages folder. I want plugins. I'm not sure. And the server is already there. Utils is already there. So let's work with these two for now. I also want to install Faker because I'm not going to implement an actual database for this little tutorial. So I'm going to install Faker.js, and it's this one. So I'm going to install it as a dependency, not a dev dependency. Let's add it as a dependency, even though it really should only be used in development environment. You don't want to use Faker. Well, I'm sure you may find use cases for it in production, but usually you want to install this as a dev dependency. I think the website even tells you to install it as a dev dependency. Let me see. If we go to get started, yep, they have the dev dependency flag added to it here. So that's that. All right, good. So what are we going to do in this pages folder now? Let me just go ahead and run the application just so we know everything is working. That should be on localhost 3000. So it's starting up. And we have a blank page. Of course we do. So the server folder. Right now, there's nothing in the server folder, right? We're going to create... let's create 2 endpoints. All right, let's work on 2 endpoints. So I'm going to right click, create a new file, and we're going to create the API folder. And within that, I'm going to say I want users endpoint, and I'm going to add a get route to this user endpoint. So let me just create that right there. And if I right click again, I should get the option to create a new API here. And this new API will be called index.get.ts. Now the .get part of this file name will tell Nuxt or Nitro that this endpoint should only be accessible via the get HTTP method. Cool. So by default, we get this latest scaffold. The defined event handler is here, and it's returning this string. So in our Nuxt application, still running, no errors. If we should bring up the DevTools, And let me just expand the sidebar. I think this option should be on by default. The DevTools actually allows you to hit your server endpoints. So if you go to, where is it? Am I not seeing it? Do I need to restart the server? Am I blind? No, I'm not. All right, let's just restart the server. Hopefully that will actually bring up this endpoint. All right, cool. So we open this again. Here it is. This wasn't there, right? This wasn't there. So we have the server routes now, and we have this endpoint that we just defined. If I should hit this endpoint, you will see where it's actually returning that hello nitro string. Cool. So now what do we want to do here? In this endpoint, we're going to import faker. Why am I not getting faker? Let's reload this. I'm sure it was installed, right? Yep. There we go. So we're going to import faker from faker. And then we're going to say that we want our user to tell us how many users they want to create. Now there's actually a utility that will help us to get query parameters from our request, right? And I think it's called get query or something like that. So I'm going to say const q is equal to get query. And of course, you can get validated query as well. Nice. So we're going to use get query. We're going to pass it the event. And then we're going to say count is equal to q.count or 10. So by default, we're going to create 10 users and send them back in our response. And if the user actually sends this count value, then we're going to send this amount, right? So now we want to say create users based on the count value. So this, I'm going to use a for loop. I'm going to say for let's undo that. In the count, right? And then I'm going to say, what's this? This is for let's uncount. I need to convert this to a string, right? A number, right? So I'm going to say that this should be a number. And then we'll get rid of that error. I'm going to create the users variable right here. And then it should actually do this. So it should be pushing a new record for each iteration. So we're going to say faker.string.uid, faker.person.full name. And then we're going to get an avatar and an email for the person as well. And then we're going to return the users. Just like that. So if I should save this and then go to our Nuxt application and hit this endpoint again, you can see where we actually get a list of users. And if you want to actually get the type for the object returned by your API endpoint, you can just click this little thing right here to generate the data schema. And it will show you all of these things. So I usually just get the interfaces only. And then you can actually use this to type the return of this API endpoint. I'm going to copy this, close this, and our API is working. Let's send that count query. So if it's sent as nothing, let me just say it's a number. If I send as 0, I'm going to get nothing back. If I remove the value, let's see, I still get nothing back. But if I say I want 5 results back, then it should only send back 5. If I say I want only 2 results back, then it will send only 2 back. So our query is actually working as it should, right? So let's go back to VS Code. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on this page, I'm going to set up the functionality to actually load our users, right? So I'm going to say, I want, how do I want to spin this? I want a div. It's going to be flex. Justify between, put a gap of 5. Then I'm going to say, in here, I want to have another div, h1, that says users. Let's add some styles to this tag. So I'm going to make it bold or boldish. So font semi-bold should work. Want to increase the size of the text. So I'm going to say text XL2. Just going to add subtext right here. It should say something like manage users. Give it some margin from the top. 1. Let's reduce the color of the subtext. So let's save that and see what it looks like. There we go. So that's what it looks like right now. Of course, we want to add all of this inside of a container. So let's say UI container. Bring this down. Save that now. And we have a little spacing going on right here. I'm going to add this as section. And I'm going to give it some padding at the top and bottom. Cool. Now we want to also add a button. The UI button. I'm going to say load users. Right. I'm going to make this a bit smaller. So give it a size of small. And this is what it looks like. It's kind of far. Let me just reduce the max width of this thing. So max width is going to be I think 2XL is good. Yeah, so we have it a little bit closer. And then we're going to create a function that will actually load the user. So on clicking this button, I want to call load data. And this load data function is going to be asynchronous. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, let me just create a variable that will actually store our users. You know, we can actually add Pinia to the mix. Let's add Pinia to the mix for this type of thing. So let's stop our server. Let's go to the Pinia website. And we're at the Nuxt documentation part of Pinia. We're going to install it with this command. So npm install Pinia and the Pinia Nuxt module. So we'll run that. Once you have Pinia installed, let's clear this terminal. Let's go back to the documentation. And if you get this error, just add this bit to your package.json file. Cool. Next, we want to add the Pinia module to our list of modules in our Nuxt config file. Let's open Nuxt config. Paste that here, save. And then we want to define our store. So we're going to create, close this, we're gonna create the stores folder. So let's just right click, select this option and select stores, create that. And then here we're gonna right click on the stores folder and we should see the option to create a new store. Now this store is gonna be called users for me. And it will scaffold this setup store for Pinia. Right now, let's just run our Nuxt application again. Run dev. And by default, Pinia actually auto imports the define store function. So we can actually remove this. And we're going to enable hot module reloading for this store as well. Hot module replacement. So in the documentation, it tells you to do it like this. Repeat. Copy this little bit right here and paste it at the bottom of our store. So if import that method at hot, if this is truthy, then we're going to accept HMR update and pass the name of our store to it right here. And the second argument is import that method at hot. Save, and that should be good to go. So back to what we were doing here. This load data function is going to come from the users store. So I'm going to define the users state in here. So the type of our user is actually going to be type user is equal to, and it's going to be that object that I copied earlier. So let's see, I think it's this one. Nice. So this is going to be an array of users. And I'm going to return this users state from this store. So let me just add some comments. Let's be good developers and leave comments. Create state for holding users. And then we're gonna create a function to load user data. So it's gonna be called load data. It's gonna be synchronous. And it's going to say, yep, we're gonna fetch the data from the server. And I'm going to say users.value is going to be equal to await fetch, and we're going to use the fetch composable from Nuxt, and it's going to call API users. So this is going to set the return value of this API call into the user's state, and we're going to of course return this function from the store as well. So now when we want to get this state and make it reactive within our components, we actually have to use another utility provided by Pinia called store to refs, and we're going to pass our use user store, and now we're actually able to destructure the users, and this can be manipulated within our view component like a regular ref. Cool. And if you want to learn more about this store to ref utility, I think it's somewhere in the documentation. Store to ref. Let's see. Store to ref. Here it is. So the documentation is right here. And it says that it creates an object of references with all the state, getters, and plugin added state properties of the store. Similar to refs, but specifically designed for Pinia stores. So methods and non-reactive properties are completely ignored. And that is true, because if I try to destructure anything else that's not state from this user store, it won't actually show up. And I do have the load data function that's returned from this, so I can actually destructure separately the load data like that, right? But I can't destructure the function from up here. So we can save this, and we'll have access to our users, and we'll have access to the load data function. So now what I want to do is, whenever nothing is displayed, I'm going to say, hey, no users loaded, or something like that, just to show the user that the state is empty. Cool. So I'm going to say vif not users.length. We're going to show this bit, and else we're going to show something else. So the other thing that we're going to show is actually our table. So let's just add some classes to the container for the table. We're going to say overflow X is going to be auto. We're going to make it rounded a bit. We're going to give it a background of our background color that's defined in our CSS file right here. And then we're going to say we want this to have a border, right? So now this empty state container is just going to say, let's make this flex column. Let's add a gap 5 and align the items to the center. So I'm gonna add an icon here, and it's just going to be lucid users, right? No users loaded. So let's save this, because we've been going for a minute without checking our website. And let's look at what we have here. So when the page gets reloaded, this is our empty state because we have no users. So let's just give this some margin from the top. I'm going to use the divider to actually create that space. So I'm going to say 10 between the two. And that's cool. I think that's okay. Let's up the size of this a bit. Let's go to 28. And add a class. So let's dim the color of that icon. Yeah, this looks more presentable. So now if I should load the users, you can see where I have this div that I defined earlier. I'm gonna just go ahead and clear the state again by refreshing, load it again, and you can see where the empty state is replaced. So that logic is actually working. So let's just say show if no users loaded, show when users are loaded. So here we're going to use the table component. All right, so I'm going to use these components to display our user, and I'm going to say, let me just first create the headers. So cons headers going to be an array, ID, name, and email. Yeah, that's good. So now here I'm going to say UI table. Then I'm going to use the UI table header. Then I'm going to use the UI table row. I'm gonna say UI table head. I think that's how it should be. Let me just double check to see. So the header is the T head, right? The head is the TH and the row is a TR. Cool. So we have T head, TR, TH, right? Table head. Nice. So here we're gonna actually loop over our headers. We're gonna say for H in headers, we're just gonna display H. So let's save that. Load the users, and we have this table being displayed. Nice. So going back, we want to use now the table body. So I'm gonna say table body. Then of course we want the table row and then the table cells. So we're gonna loop over the users inside of this table row section and print the data for each user. So I'm gonna add the ID, the name, and the email to the table. And voila, there it is. And this is why we added the wrapper around the table so that it's actually scrollable like this. Without this wrapper, the information would overflow outside of our container. Cool. I don't like how long these IDs are. Too long. Let me see if Baker has something else that I can use. String, maybe. Nano ID. I think this is shorter. Yes. So let's use a nano ID instead of an actual UUID. So let's say figure a string nano ID, and I want it to be 5. Yes, I want it to be 5. So let's save that. We can close out the Pinia documentation for now. Close this as well. Refresh this page. Load our users. And there we go. We have shorter IDs. Awesome. So let's just go back to our index page, close up. And we can see where we have this logic. We can actually load the users from the API. No problem. So now let's just format these things a little bit. So here I actually want this to be an A tag. And it should actually be saying, oh no, not this one. This one, email. So the email, this should be an A tag that says mail to this location. Let's add a class of underline to this one. An underline offset of 2. Save. And now we have these things. We want to also add some color to it. So let's just make the text sky so people know that, hey, it's actually clickable. It's probably too bright. But we'll leave it like that for now. Or what we could do is just make the underline in this color. So the text is going to be muted foreground, and then the decoration is going to be sky 400. So we have this little thing going. Also, when we hover, let's make this the text change to sky 500 and add a little transition to that. Save. Hover, turns blue. Nice. And we're also getting back the avatar with this response. So I'm going to put that little avatar next to the name right here. And to do that, we'll just modify this cell. We're going to make this flex item center, gap of about 3 should do. We're going to use the UI avatar component. The source is going to be, is it avatar that's coming back? Avatar, right? So it's going to be that, and then the name is going to be displayed next to it. So if I save this, now this is what our table looks like. And this is fine. I think this is fine. Probably want to increase the width of this container a little bit more. So let me say 4XL. Is this a thing? Yes, it is. So I save. Nice. So it's all wider. Good. So we're actually loading our users. Nice. So now, what if we want to actually protect this endpoint? Now, to protect an endpoint, it makes sense to have some sort of authentication in place. And to add that authentication to our application, I'm just going to reach out to the Nuxt Auth Utils package or module. And I'm going to go to the GitHub documentation. And to get started, we're going to install Nuxt Auth Utils with this command. So we'll copy it, stop our server, run that command. Next, we're going to add the module to our list of modules. So we go to our Nuxt config, and down here, we just paste that in. And then we want to create a .env file and add this variable to it. So we're going to come here, double click this area to create a new file. And then we're going to type in .env. And then we're going to paste this in. And this should be a string that's no less than 32 characters. Now there's a command to generate a random string in Node. And this is it. So Copilot is helping me right here. Copy that command, paste it in, and we get a random string. We can just assign it to this value right here. So we click save, and then we can actually close this out. Let's see what we need to do next. Once that's done, we have access to these composables that the module provides. So if the user is logged in, we can actually get back the user, we can get the session, we can clear the session. And there's another function called fetch, which will actually get the logged in user. So we're gonna use this. Let me just copy it and put it inside of the index file for now. And it's gonna throw an error because we have not generated our Nuxt types as yet. So let's just save that and ignore this for right now. Also, we want to, on the server, create a login endpoint. And to log a user in, usually you'd have logic in place where you check the database to see if the user exists. If they do exist, you check if the password is correct. Then if the password is correct, you check if the user is blocked. If the user isn't blocked, you check if their email is confirmed. If their email is confirmed, then you can go ahead and set the user session. Authentication can get very complicated. It depends on what you want your system to do or how secure you want it to be. But for now, let's just go ahead and grab this set user session utility function from the Nuxt Auth Utils module. And we're going to create a new endpoint. This endpoint is going to be called login. So I'm going to create it under the API folder, and it's going to be inside the auth folder. And I'm going to say login.post because the login request should be a post request. Press enter. Now, once I press enter, I'm going to paste this in. Like I said, we haven't run the prepare command. Let me just go ahead and run it so we get rid of these errors. So the nuxt prepare command, which is post install inside our package.json. It's called post install. But what it will do is generate the different types that you need within your Nuxt application. So now our error is gone and we're getting a new error. And it's saying that this should not exist inside of this object. Why is that? And that's because we need to actually add custom properties to this user session type. And to do that, the documentation says that we should create a file, and then add this bit to it with our custom properties or custom types. So we're going to go ahead and right click, create a new file called auth.d.ts. This could be anything. You can call it globals.d.ts. And then we're going to paste that bit of code inside of the file right here. So inside our set user session, we want to add this logged in at property. So I'm going to add it right there, and it should be a date. And now we're not getting that error anymore, right? So this is our user, and I'm going to add a little comment. I'm going to say, in a real app, you should reach out to DB or external auth service to fetch the user and validate the different stuff. So let's save that. So now, since we don't have all of that database and stuff configured, we're gonna use faker again. So at faker, we're gonna bring out this faker, and we're gonna set the ID of the user to be that. Let's just use the auto completion from Github Copilot. We're gonna set the user, and then we're gonna return a value, right? We're gonna say, let's just create this user. Let's just create this user. So we're gonna create user, create fake user, right? We're gonna set the user to this user value that's up here, right? And then we're gonna return this user. Cool. So now, if I should run my application, npm run dev, application gets restarted. And if we should bring up the dev tools and go to payload, we see this Nuxt session. So right now it's actually empty because we're not logged in. But if we should go to our endpoint and then send a post request right here, you can see where we actually get back this user, right? And then if we should refresh, how do I refresh this? So let's refresh the page. Oh, I'm getting a parser. What's that? All right, I don't know where that came from. But if I should go back, you can see where we actually have this user set in our session. And what we want to do is we want to block a user from loading our user's data if they are not logged in, right? So to handle that, I'm going to go ahead and set a navbar inside of the layout. So I'm going to say your navbar, I'm going to make it sticky. And inside the navbar, I'm going to put a container, right? And this container is going to be flex, item center, justify between, and here, I'm just going to give it a title, call it protect API. Make it semi-bold, make the text a bit larger. And then on this side, we're going to have another flex div. Give it a gap of like 2. Then we're going to use some buttons, right? The variant is going to be a link. Well, link? No, let's not make it link. Let's make it outline. Size is going to be small. And in here, we are going to say log in or sign in. So let's save and see what that looks like. There it is. Let's add some space to this. We're going to give this an explicit height of H14 or 56 pixels. Looks like, no, yep, that's better. And then when we click this sign in button, we actually want to sign our user in. So we're going to create another store and we're going to call it auth. We're going to do the hot module replacement for the store as well. So let's just put that here. We don't need to import that explicitly. And in here, we're going to add the sign-in function. So I'm going to say const sign in is equal to a synchronous function. See, it's telling me to get email and password because typically that's what you do in a real application. We're not going to do that. We're just going to say await fetch, and the endpoint is this one, and the method has to be post. And of course, we're going to return this sign-in function. So now we can use the auth store to sign our user in. So let's go back to the layout and on click, we want to call use auth store dot sign in. Right now, whenever we sign in order to not have to reload the page to get our logged in user, we want to fetch that signed in user, that session that's created at the same time. And to do that, we can actually use the fetch function that's provided by the Nuxt Auth Utils composable. So where is it? Where's our auth store? Auth store. So we're going to bring in the use user session composable, and what we want is actually we want all of these functions. But we're going to get fetch, and once we've logged in, we're going to await fetch, and here we can actually return all of these values. So the logged in value, the user, the session, the clear function, and the fetch function. Do I want to return this? Let's return it. So now we can actually sign our user in, but we're currently signed in, so I want a sign out button as well. So to sign out, let's say log out, we're going to actually use the clear function that's returned, right? And if I save that, this should only be visible if use auth store dot logged in is true. So if we're logged in, we'll have the sign out button, and this should be hidden if we are logged in already. Wait, that wasn't right. So we should actually see the sign in button if we are not logged in, and we should only see the log out button if we are logged in. Right, that's correct. So now if we go to our website, we have the log out button, and then since we're logged out, we now have the sign in button. So we can toggle between logging in and logging out. So now we're currently logged out, and if I should refresh the page, still logged out, the session is cleared. But if I sign in, and let me just go back here, you can see where session is actually set. Cool. So now what I want to do is, if you are not logged in, I want to stop you from visiting this endpoint that will actually load the users. Now, if we're logged out, we can actually load the users still, and we don't want that. So let's go ahead and protect our endpoint. Let me close these, close this. And to protect our endpoint, we're going to use a middleware. So I'm going to create a new file here called middleware, and it's going to be called guard.ts. All right. Now here you want to define the event handler. I'm not seeing that option. So let's just go to the documentation and go to server middlewares and copy this. All right. So we copy this, we paste that in, define event handler, and let's just save that. I think we'll have to restart our server. Reload VS Code for this quickly to go away. And in this middleware, I just want to say, okay, get the so I want to get the actual endpoint that is being called. So get the URL being called. I'm going to say const URL is equal to get. Is it request URL? Yes. And we pass in the event. So I'm going to go ahead and just log this URL for now to see what we're actually getting back. All right. So if we visit our application, you can see where a request to this endpoint and this endpoint was made. All right. So now we want to actually get the path name from the URL. And then we're going to say const path name is equal to new URL and pass in the URL that we have here. So now let's log the path name. So let's remove this one up here. Hit save. And if we should refresh this page, go back to our terminal, you can see that the home path was called and this API auth session was called. Cool. So what we want to do is create a list of endpoints that we want to protect. So create a list of endpoints that we want to protect. We're going to say protected routes is going to include API users. So whenever we send a request to this API endpoint, API/users, we want this to be a protected route. Now we're going to use regular expressions to check if the endpoint that we are currently getting is a protected one or not. So we're going to say if the protected routes includes the path name or is equal to the path name. So we probably want to loop over this. So for I protected routes dot length, let's call this R. So if the path name is listed in the protected routes, then we want to actually check the logged in user, and if the person isn't logged in, then we want to throw an error. So we're going to say if path name is equal to R, and we're gonna log something protected route R. So let's reload the page, check our console, and we did not get this log statement because we didn't hit a protected endpoint. Now, if we should load the users, loading the users will actually hit the protected route called API/users. Cool. And now, if this is the case, then we want to ensure that the user is logged in before they can actually get a response. So I'm going to ensure user is logged in before getting a response. So let's see. To do that, the module, the Nuxt Auth Utils module, actually provides this utility function called require user session. I don't know if it's a composable or a function, but it provides this thing. And we can copy this and just paste it in here. Of course, we're going to get an error because we need to make this asynchronous. Hit save. And now, let me just open the terminal and reload this page. See if we get any errors. Nope. Now, if we try to load the users, we get this error back. Right? And it's just saying that you're unauthorized. You can't hit this endpoint. So now we need to actually handle this error properly inside our store. So let's go to our store users, and instead of just sending back this value, we are going to say, let's wrap this in a try catch. Click on this little light bulb, surround with try catch statement. We're going to give this a type of any, and we're going to display a toast. And this toast is actually coming from this composable that was added with UI thing. So we're going to give it a title. It's going to say error, and the variation is going to be destructive. The duration is going to be 5 seconds. Let's remove this extra bracket, and that should be it. So this error from the fetch utility, if we want to access the message, we actually have to access it like this. So error.data.message. Cool. Now when we save that and we try to load the users, oh wait, let's reload. Keep getting that parse error. I don't know what that is. So we're gonna try and load the users, and then we can see that we get this little error message right here saying that you're unauthorized. Now, if we should sign in and load the users, then we don't get an error message. So that's basically the approach to this thing. So if you want to protect your endpoint, you just follow this setup. Like I said, I don't think it's very scalable for larger applications. I haven't tested it out on a very big project, but it's a pattern to be aware of. And of course, if you wanted to be more specific, you could get like the HTTP method being called, and do some more checks inside of this thing. But essentially, that's how you'd actually do that with your server endpoints. So let's see if I can actually add this to Netlify. Let's see if it will actually deploy and work properly. So I'm gonna update the README. Protect a server endpoints with Nuxt. Right. I need to update the package.json. No, it's not private. Protect server endpoints. Nuxt 3. Let's save that. I don't think I need to modify this anymore. And then we're gonna push this to GitHub. I've been seeing this error since the update to Nuxt 3.9. Not sure why I'm getting this. I saw where someone opened an issue, so hopefully it gets fixed soon. Let's just start the server. Go to the source control tab in VS Code, and I'm going to just say start as my commit message. All of these should be committed. Wait. Let's go to the page and let's remove this because I don't need this here. And we're going to use head. We're going to set the title to users and set this little meta tag right here. Save. Then let's just hit that commit. Let's publish the branch. Protect server API Nuxt 3. I think that's fine. Let's do this as a public repository so that one can access it. Open it on GitHub. Nice. And then we're going to log into Netlify. And we're going to add a new site. So we're going to import it from GitHub. I'm authorized, and the name is this thing. So we're going to search for it. Yep. We're going to set up the deployment settings, the build settings, the base directory. I don't need to trouble this. npm run build is the build command, and the directory should actually be dist, not .nuxt dist. Do we need environment variables? Yes, we do. Let me just quickly generate a new one of these for production. So we're gonna do env. Oh wait, it's password. All right. It's gonna be called that, and then the value is going to be this string. So let's just deploy this and see if it will actually work on Netlify. So it's deploying. And we can look at the logs by clicking on that link. I usually look at the logs when I'm deploying for the first time just to see if, there are any errors that I need to take care of before redeploying the application. All right, it's initialized properly. No error so far. It's building the server. Looks like it's gonna work. So all good. Yep, looks good. So let's just hit the preview button. There we go. Oh, I probably should add a button to change from light and dark mode. Well, let's see. If I try to load users, I'm unauthorized. But if I sign in, right, then I load the users. So it actually works in production. Nice. Okay, so let's go back to VS Code and actually add the light dark mode button right here. So I'm gonna go in my layout, then I'm gonna say I want to add another button up here. This one should be displayed at all times. I'm going to make it outline ghost. Let's make it a ghost button. Small, I'm going to say icon small. And the icon is going to be lucid sun medium. Should be fine. I'm going to give it a width of 4, height of 4. Hit save. And then when I click it, I don't want to do this. When I click it, I actually want to change the color mode. So I'm going to say color mode preference is equal to. Then I'm going to check if the color mode value is equal to dark. And if it is, I want to change this to light. If it's not, I want to switch it to dark. So let's run this locally to see if it works before deploying a bug to production. Server starting up. And we want to check it over here. Here we go. Okay. So now, yep, this toggle actually works. Nice. So that's it for the video, guys. I'm going to go ahead and add the link to the actual production application to the README. And if you have any questions or concerns, just let me know. I'm more than happy to help. Stay safe, happy new year, and peace.